Millionaire Elon Musk, panics after descubriendo su blanco homeless, se fue. La lluvia se atajó barrido en las calles cómicas de la ciudad. Las luces neón desaparecieron como torres de correcciones. En medio de este caos, hubié a Ethan Reynolds, billonario, titán de la industria. Hasta ahora, su mundo se estaba querumbulando rápidamente. Su hijo adoptado Elijah, apenas 21 años, vaciló sin rastre. Las soportadas queremos que siguen leyendo. The disappearance of a son in the shadow of poder. It wasn't just a missing person case. It was a scandal, one that threatened to ignite the carefully guarded imperio Ethan had built brick by brick. Tonight, Ethan found himself in the heart of a neighborhood most wouldn't dare enter voluntariamente. Dark corners whispered stories, historias de pena, neglecto y seres olvidados. The streets were alive, echoing with muffled cries, distant sirens, and the sharp voices of those struggling to survive. Ethan's expensive shoes squelched. People watched him, eyes wary, lips tight. Charity visits from rich men were usually empty promises. But Ethan wanted more than that tonight. He wanted redemption. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Dirty clothes torn and soaked, eyes sunken but wild. The man's voice was rough, almost broken. "Ethan, it's me, Elijah." Heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. Ethan stared, disbelief and something raw and fierce twisting inside him. That voice, he knew it. But how could this man, this ghost of a kid, be his son? The crowd gasped, whispered, swept the street like a rogue wave. Is that really him? How did he end up like this? The billionaire's son? Homeless? Ethan's hands trembled. Memory flashes cut sharp. A lost birthday party. A harsh word, a silent car ride home. Had his hunger for success blinded him to Elijah's pain? Had he lost his son in the maze of power and luxury? A lump grew heavy in Ethan's throat as the rain soaked through his coat. He wanted to reach out, to pull Elijah close, to promise he'd fix everything. But Elijah pulled away, eyes dark, full of secrets no one dared ask about. Suddenly, phones buzzed everywhere. The media was circling like vultures. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted impossible questions. Ethan felt exposed, stripped bare, in a world that demanded answers he didn't have. His phone rang. A voice on the other line whispered things Ethan never expected. Twisted truths about Elijah's past adoption, secrets nobody had told him. The bond between father and son suddenly seemed fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Time was slipping, running through Ethan's fingers like water. Elijah wasn't just missing. He was on a path Ethan couldn't follow yet. Then, Ethan's phone chimed again. A message. 2 words, still here. Hope and dread tangled inside him. Was this a promise? A cry for help? Or something else entirely? The city pulsed around them, alive, unforgiving. Would Ethan find Elijah in time? And if he does, will they survive the truth waiting between them? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, Drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Ethan's heart raced as he stared at Elijah, lost in the chaos around them. The weight of unanswered questions pressed heavily on his chest. Then, a terrifying sound shattered the moment, a distant explosion. A flash flickered from a block away, a burst of fire illuminating the darkened streets. The crowd erupted, some running for cover, others diving for safety. Chaos unfolding like a dance of madness. Ethan's instinct took over. He grabbed Elijah's arm, pulling him close. "We need to go!" Panic coursed through him, but he felt Elijah resist, eyes wide, staring at the flames, licking the night sky. "Wait, I can't." Elijah's voice was barely a whisper, drowned out by screams. But Ethan wouldn't let him go. He led him deeper into the shadows, away from the glow of destruction. "Why are you doing this? What else is there?" Elijah spat, pain distorting his face. "Because I'm your father!" Ethan's voice rose above the chaos, raw with emotion. "I need to help you. We can figure this out together." But as they inched backward, something caught Ethan's eye. It was a figure rushing from the fire. A woman, frantic, her clothes singed, face streaked with soot. "Get out of there!" she yelled toward the blaze. But as she turned, Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. Her eyes were familiar. It was Jenna, Elijah's birth mother, a shadow from a past he thought buried. Elijah stumbled backward. No, it can't be. But it was her, right there. The woman who had slipped through Ethan's life like sand through fingers. The woman whose absence had marked Elijah's childhood. "I know him!" Jenna cried, collapsing to her knees, desperation written all over her face. "I never wanted to lose him!" Ethan froze. Confused glances passed between him and Elijah. Everything he thought he understood about their family, about those years he'd spent raising Elijah, felt like it was being pulled apart. "What do you mean?" The world fell still for a second, time holding its breath. Then, the chaos rushed back in. A siren blared close by, and the crowd surged around them. But Jenna only focused on Elijah, her eyes pleading. "I thought you were safe. I thought—" She choked on the words, hands shaking. "They told me you were happy. They lied." Fury and betrayal ignited something deep within Elijah. "You left me. You chose to disappear." He was trembling, rage and hurt washing over him in waves, the flood of his past bursting forth. "I had no choice, Elijah. They took you from me. I tried, I fought for you. But they—" Her voice broke, an avalanche of hurt crashing down around them. Faces in the crowd turned, listening. The weight of their story began to ripple through the air, the revelations potent and heavy. But then, bang! A second explosion rocked the pavement beneath them. Flames erupted closer now. People's cries mingled with the roar of fire. "Run!" Ethan shouted, instinct kicking in, grabbing Elijah's arm again. He couldn't fight this battle. Not here. Not now. But as they turned to escape, Elijah faltered, eyes darting back toward Jenna. "Mom!" And just like that, everything shifted. Amidst the turmoil, in the face of fire and fear, love and resentment collided. The ground felt unstable under their feet, not knowing what it would take to rebuild or break them further apart. Would they choose each other? Would they survive the revelations tearing through their fragile bond? Time fought against them. The night, wrapping them in chaos. Would they be swallowed by the flames or find a way to rise from the ashes? Elijah's voice echoed in Ethan's ears as the crowd buzzed around them, uncertainty hanging heavy like the rain. Still here, the words played over and over, a haunting melody coursing through his veins. But before Ethan could respond, a crash shattered the air. A man, wild-eyed and seething, collided into the scene, sending people stumbling back. He was shouting, his voice raw with fury. A whirlwind of chaos, wrapped in a soaked jacket. Get away from him! Ethan's heart lagged, confusion flashing like lightning. The man lunged forward, his hands outstretched. Elijah, you can't trust him! Elijah recoiled at the sight, fear and anger clashing on his face. Get off me, Marcus! This isn't your fight! Ethan's blood ran cold. Marcus, as in the old friend Elijah never spoke about? The one who had slipped away during the years of his absence? Are you insane? Marcus spat, glancing at Ethan like he was a disease. You think he cares? You think he's here for you? Look around! Ethan's stomach twisted. Details from the past collided in his mind. Marcus had always been a shadow, a ghost in the corner of their lives. The friends Elijah had chosen over him. What are you doing, Elijah? Ethan finally found his voice, heavy and strained. We can talk. Please, just come home. But as Elijah stepped back, his own demons rising, Marcus moved closer, like a protective wall. Home? That's not a place. It's a prison. You don't understand. Ethan felt the crowd's attention shift, eyes darting like startled animals. He could sense their judgment, thick and heavy like the rain. The whispers grew louder. Who is he? Why is he fighting for him? What's happening? The moment fractured, tension stretching until it seemed ready to snap. Then, with a sudden ferocity, Marcus pointed at Ethan. He's lying! You think he cares? Your whole life, he couldn't even care to notice you were gone. Elijah's brow furrowed, pain slicing through his features. A flicker of hope in Ethan's chest, twisted into something darker. Could Marcus be right? Had he missed the signs? Stop it! Elijah shouted. I don't owe you anything, Marcus. I'm not your puppet. But as he stood there, soaked to the bone and torn between worlds, Ethan couldn't help but remember another truth. Those dark calls about Elijah's past, the whispers of betrayal that had shocked him to his core. In that moment, the ground beneath Ethan's feet shifted. He felt the world tilt like a clock unwinding. Suddenly, another figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, face obscured by the downpour. Elijah, she cried, desperation lacing her voice. Ethan squinted through the rain, recognizing her. The woman who had delivered the shocking news. The truth about Elijah's adoption. What are you doing here? The woman's gaze locked onto Elijah, fury and fear mingling in a storm of emotion. You don't know everything about why you're really here. They've lied to you. The crowd gasped, an electric jolt of confusion rippling through them. Ethan's heart thudded painfully, a sensation of losing control washing over him. Elijah stepped back, eyes wide, breath hitching. "What do you mean?" The woman took a step closer, her voice shaking, raw with urgency. "The past is not what it seems, and you're not who you think you are." A silence fell heavy, the kind that felt like the world had halted. Time suspended. Ethan's thoughts raced. Lies? Secrets? What past had they buried so deep? Elijah's face crumpled, his world tilting further into chaos. "What do you mean?" But before she could respond, thunder cracked above them. The city's breath caught, and the sky seemed to shudder, as if in mourning. "Who are you?" Ethan shouted, voice breaking. Could the truth about Elijah undo everything? Was the bond they thought they shared just a thin thread ready to snap? Everything hung in the balance, and the moment promised darkness. Ethan's heart pounded as the woman's voice hung in the heavy air, words swirling around him. "You're not who you think you are." The crowd held its breath, a collective gasp echoing like thunder. Elijah's face twisted, un certidumbre warpen en temor. "¿Qué te mean, de sentimiento?" Su voz tembló, revelando acracas en su bravado. Ethan percibió una peada contra la narezunaca. Vivida barco, ponerse con Marcus entrelevántelo, striken. Marcos prisido con érase, inalmemente desesperado. El caos eruptió, la gente se surgía, pidiéndose dispersar, el pánico tentras enlazar. Matching the rhythm of Ethan's frantic thoughts. Who was this woman? What did she know? His hands itched to reach for Elijah, to pull him away from Marcos, to get them out of here. "Stop, Marcus!" Ethan cried, adrenaline coursing through him. But Marcus was relentless, eyes glinting with a fierce protectiveness. "You think she has your best interests at heart? You don't even know what she's done." The woman stepped forward, voice cutting through the chaos. "You have to trust me, Elijah. Please, this is bigger than you know." But Elijah was caught, pulled between the past and the present, between secrets and truths. "What do you mean? I don't understand." As fear slipped from his lips, Ethan felt his stomach twist. Then, like a lightning bolt striking, a roar of sirens sliced through the night. Red and blue lights flickered, illuminating the scene like a spotlight. Eyes turned, faces of the curious and the concerned glimpsed through the urban shadows, each one waiting for the inevitable show. "Run!" Ethan shouted, instinct taking charge again. He grabbed Elijah's arm, yanking him along. But then, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The stereo thump of an explosion erupted not far off, sending shockwaves through the crowd. Windows shattered, glass raining down like confetti of destruction. People screamed, scattering like ants. The air turned electric, thick with fear and adrenaline. Ethan's pulse raced. "We need to go now!" But Elijah hesitated, eyes wide, searching. "What was that? What's happening?" "Later, we'll talk later," Ethan shouted, pulling him away. But then came another cry, a haunting scream that froze them both. It was Jenna, the woman he couldn't quite fathom standing there, her features illuminated under the flashing lights. "No!" she shrieked. "You don't understand. That was not meant for you, Elijah." "What?" Elijah shrieked back, confusion warping into danger. "What are you talking about?" In that moment, time exploded. A figure emerged from the shadows at breakneck speed, tackling Ethan to the ground. A man in a suit, face obscured, but fury blazing in his eyes. The world went dark for a fragment of a second. "Stay away from him!" the man yelled, pinning Ethan down. A glint of a badge flashed before Ethan's eyes in a disorienting blur. "Police! Everyone back!" Ethan's heart stopped. What? Wait! But the officer pressed down harder, the weight of authority bearing down, his voice sharp. "What are you doing with him? Get off me!" Ethan struggled, panic gripping him. Elijah stood there, eyes wide, expression shifting between shock and realization. "What do you mean?" He took a step back, fear rising in his throat. And then the officer turned to Elijah, voice stern yet cracking. "You need to listen. We have something to discuss, something you need to understand about your past." The crowd fell silent, eyes widened, whispering among themselves. What do they know? What's going on? Fear clawed at Ethan's chest. "No, don't listen to him." But Elijah froze, caught in the web of a truth he hadn't begun to unravel. Would this officer bring salvation or destruction? What revelations loomed just beneath the surface? As the rain fell heavier, soaking everything in despair, the shadows whispered secrets that could crack their world wide open. The night held its breath, waiting for the truth to surface. Ethan stood frozen, torn between the rain-soaked pavement and the wild eyes of his son. "Elijah," he whispered, barely able to form the name. The world around him dimmed. Was this truly the boy he once loved, or just a shadow of the life he had lost? Suddenly, chaos erupted. A siren blared from a squad car that rounded the corner, lights flashing like a fever dream. The crowd stirred, some stepping back as if sensing danger. Elijah flinched, his face twisting in fear. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice trembling. "They'll take you too." "Who?" Ethan's heart raced, confusion crashing over him like the relentless rain. He glanced around, trying to make sense of Elijah's words, the world suddenly spiraling. Before Elijah could respond, a group of figures surged from an alley, faces obscured, but their intentions clear, sharp and menacing. The crowd scattered, a wave of panic. Phones clicked and clacked, capturing every moment. "Run!" Elijah shouted, grabbing Ethan's arm, pulling him back. But it was too late. A figure from the pack reached them first, a heavy hand gripping Ethan's shoulder. "Get away from him!" Elijah growled, fear boiling over, but the man just laughed, a sharp sound slicing through the air. "Your daddy's not going to save you, kid." The man's sneer twisted Ethan's gut like a knife. "You think you can just disappear? You're in our territory now." Ethan barely had time to react before another voice pierced through the chaos. "Elijah, stop!" A woman stepped into the flickering light, her arms outstretched. "Mom?" Elijah gasped. Ethan's heart stumbled, the truth suddenly dawning. This woman, tired eyes and hardened face, was Elijah's birth mother. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. Questions surged. What had he missed? Why hadn't he known? Had he really been blind in his ambition? The crowd buzzed with energy, hungry for the unfolding drama. "You're alive," Elijah murmured, almost in disbelief. Shock and confusion danced in the rain on faces nearby. Whispers erupted, the air thick with tension. "Why did you come back now?" "I had to," the woman replied, desperation clawing in her voice. "They're looking for you, Elijah! They want you back!" She glanced at Ethan, eyes narrowing in accusation. "And him. He's the reason you're in danger." The accusation hit like a slap. Ethan's mind spun. What danger? What had he done? "I'm not the enemy!" he shouted, heart racing. Before Elijah could answer, the gathered figures surged, cutting through the chaos, eyes fixed on the scene. They didn't just want Elijah. They wanted the truth. "Ethan, we need to go!" Elijah pulled again, urgency swirling like smoke. Just then, a distant crack echoed, sharper than thunder. A shot rang out, loud and jarring. The crowd gasped, eyes wide in shock. People ducked and scrambled, and Ethan felt the world shift beneath him. "Run! Get down!" Elijah screamed, pulling his father close. The chaos began to collide, bodies falling, panic rising. Ethan's mind was screaming, questions assaulting him. Who was after them? What had he stumbled into? Elijah turned to Ethan, fear blazing in his eyes. "You have to trust me. We can't stay." Ethan's heart pounded. The answer was out there, lost between the truth of his past and the chaos of the moment. But now they were running, the weight of everything crashing down like the rain above. Would he lose Elijah again? Would the truth tear them apart even further? The city pulsed like a heartbeat, unforgiving and alive. They dashed into the dark, unsure of where their path would lead, the shadows closing in. All Ethan knew was that everything was about to change, and fast. The city pulsed around them, alive, unforgiving. Ethan's heart hammered like a drum. The promise in Elijah's message flickered in his mind. But before Ethan could even speak, the atmosphere shifted abruptly. A woman burst through the crowd, her hair wild, eyes wide with terror. "Someone's been shot," she screamed. "Just down the street. A kid! They're saying it's Elijah!" Ethan's breath caught like a stone in his throat. The words crashed over him, relentless. The crowd swelled, pushing him forward, fear igniting movement. He didn't care about being noticed anymore. All he felt was a desperate urgency to reach Elijah. "No, it can't be him," Ethan whispered. But his gut twisted hard, a familiar ache of dread pooling deep. He should have seen the signs. This world, with its shadows and secrets, was merciless. "Go, go!" shouted a man, shoving his way past, moving towards the sound of chaos, towards the gunfire. That man's fear became contagious, spreading through the crowd like a wildfire. Panic erupted. People began to scatter. But Ethan stood frozen. Could it be? He glanced at Elijah, whose eyes were wide, flickering between confusion and fear. Ethan yelled back, but the urgency in his voice was overshadowed by the growing panic of the streets. Suddenly, a group of masked figures darted past, an unmistakable flash of black jackets and glints of metal. They were too fast, too organized. Ethan's instincts kicked in. "Elijah, get down!" But it was too late. There was a sharp crack. A gunshot rang through the air, loud and unforgiving. Ethan saw movement, a body hitting the ground in a sickening thud. The world slowed. He felt like he was viewing a nightmare in slow motion. Ethan struggled to breathe. The crowd surged back, retreating from the noise, from the chaos. Some screamed, others dropped to their knees, hands covering their faces in fear. He pushed through, heart racing, adrenaline coursing like poison. He reached the site where the body lay sprawled on the pavement. But his heart sank. It wasn't Elijah. A young boy, barely older than a child, was bleeding on the ground. The realization crashed over him like ice water. It didn't stop there. Elijah's eyes locked on the fallen boy. They were wide, full of horror. This is my brother. Elijah choked. Ethan stumbled back, confusion clawing at his insides. What do you mean? You don't have a brother. But Elijah shook his head, tears spilling over his cheeks. I was adopted. Remember, I had a brother. He went missing. I thought he was gone for good. He was never found. Elijah's sudden vulnerability cracked Ethan's heart open. But before he could respond, another round of gunfire echoed in the street, loud and quick. The masked figures were coming back, angry shouts following right behind them. "Run!" shouted someone, but chaos reigned. Ethan grabbed Elijah's wrist, but the pull of the crowd tore them apart in an instant. The city twisted, reality unraveling as Ethan fought through bodies, desperately looking for Elijah. But all around him, confusion reigned. The world blurred, neon lights fading. The boy who'd been lost was now here, and yet another truth hung heavy in the air. Would he ever find him again? And would they ever escape the ghosts waiting in the shadows? Ethan's heart raced with each pulse of adrenaline. The message blinked insistently on his phone screen. Still here. It felt like a tether made of hope and despair, pulling him in two directions at once. "Where?" he managed to call out, voice thick with a mixture of panic and desperation. Elijah's gaze flickered, full of unspoken thoughts, but he didn't answer. Instead, he turned sharply, scanning the crowd like a wild animal sensing danger. The rain battered the pavement like 1,000 whispers, drowning out everything else. Then, out of nowhere, a shout erupted from the back of the crowd. "Look out!" Ethan's instincts kicked in as he whipped around. A figure, a man, wild and feral, burst from the shadows, eyes glazed with intent. The crowd gasped and scattered, ducking back. The man lunged forward, a knife glinting like a flash of lightning. Time slowed. Ethan's body surged into action. He shot forward, adrenaline fueling every movement. "Elijah!" But the warning was swallowed by chaos. With a quick twist, Ethan pushed Elijah aside, just as the man swung wildly. The blade caught Ethan's arm, a sharp burn slicing through his skin. He barely registered the pain. The world narrowed to the frantic look on Elijah's face. "Dad!" Elijah shouted, eyes wide in shock and fear. The man stumbled back, his weapon now slick with blood. Ethan staggered, clutching his arm, the warmth of his own blood mingling with the rain. Panic surged in his chest, a tidal wave threatening to drown him. He couldn't fall. Not now. The crowd roared to life, confusion erupting as they struggled to comprehend the violence. Someone called 911, voices clamoring over each other. In a cacophony of chaos, Elijah stepped toward the assailant, fists clenched. "What's wrong with you?" His voice shook. It was raw, primal. "Get away from him!" Ethan shouted, but the command cracked in his throat, mingled with mounting dread. He could feel the weight of the world shifting. Elijah faced the man, who was now breathing heavily, dripping with rain and rage. "You think you can just attack us?" But something flickered in the man's eyes. Recognition? Ethan's pulse raced as he tried to regain his ground. He reached out, his body instinctively positioning itself between Elijah and the threat. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice strained but stable, despite the blood dripping down his arm. Suddenly, the man's gaze softened, confusion swirling with anger. "You don't remember me, do you?" His voice stumbled, raw, breaking through the chaos. "You left me." A jolt shot through Ethan. Recognition hit him like a freight train. Memories flooded back. An orphanage, a face, a boy who had once looked at him with hope. The past crept up, heavy and suffocating. This man wasn't just some random attacker. "Elijah, stay back!" Ethan rasped, the realization striking him. He's from... But before he could finish, the man took a step closer, eyes wild yet pained. "You were supposed to save us!" The weight of his own past bore down on Ethan, his foundations shaking. Everything he built, everything he thought he knew, spun into chaos. Elijah's features twisted in confusion and betrayal. His own father, standing stunned before a dark reflection of his family's choices. In the chilling silence that followed, shouts faded. The rain slowed. Hearts raced in the stillness, and in that moment, the truth hung between them, heavy and undeniable. What bond could hold when secrets shaped into blades waited to cut deeper? The rain mingled with tears, and Ethan stood on a precipice of his own making, the real fight only just beginning. Would he ever understand? The world blurred as everything changed in an instant, and now, as the sirens wailed in the distance, he was left wondering how deep the wounds truly ran. Ethan felt the world tilt beneath him, the ground shifting in a way that crushed his heart. Everything spiraled. "You were supposed to save us!" The man's voice echoed, sharp and filled with anger. The revelation loomed, heavy and unrelenting, but then something shifted in the air. A sudden tension, thick and electric, crackled like a storm about to break. The sirens grew louder, the chaos closing in, but the moment felt suspended. Elijah's eyes darted back to Ethan, confusion etched into every line of his face. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice trembling between fear and anger. But the man didn't respond. His gaze remained locked on Ethan, a storm of emotions swirling within. And just as Ethan opened his mouth to respond, a deafening blast shattered the night. A single gunshot, sharp and cruel, slicing through the rain-soaked chaos. The crowd erupted into panic as people flooded away from the source. Chaos swirling like a dark, consuming tide. Ethan turned, instinct yelling at him to protect Elijah. But the man crumpled to the ground, his face twisted in shock. Blood pooled around him, dark and glistening against the pavement. The truth crashed down, heavier than he could bear. Elijah's brother, the boy he never got to know. "No!" Elijah roared, rushing forward, his expression morphing from shock to pure devastation. "What did you do?" He fell to his knees beside the stranger, hands trembling as he reached for him. The world ignited. "Get back!" Ethan yelled, lungs tightening, desperation pouring from his voice. But it was too late. The moment was fracturing, splintering under the weight of grief and anger. Then, out of the chaos, a voice rang clear through the darkness. "Stop! Everyone! Freeze!" A tall figure emerged, clad in a police uniform, voice commanding yet urgent. Ethan barely registered the words as he shoved the scene behind him, eyes locked on Elijah. "We need to go," he urged, pulling at his son's shoulders. But Elijah didn't budge. Tears streamed down his cheeks, mixing with the rain as he looked between the fallen man and Ethan. Was he telling the truth? Was he? His voice faltered, heavy with the weight of a truth that felt like it could crush them both. Ethan's heart sank. "Elijah, we can talk about this later. We're out of time!" But just then, a loud scream rang out. Blockades shattered, lights flickered. The crowd gasped, stepping back as another figure rushed onto the scene, drenched and desperate. It was Jenna. "No, you don't understand!" she cried, voice breaking like glass. "You can't. This was never supposed to happen." Her eyes flickered, darting toward the fallen man, then back to Elijah. "He's not who you think he is!" The world swayed. Everything he thought he knew felt like a fragile illusion, unraveling right before him. "What do you mean?" Elijah shouted, overwhelmed. But before she could answer, a loud crash echoed behind them. People shrieked, diverting attention as fear swept through the crowd like wildfire. A car screeched to a halt. Another gunshot fired into the night, this time from the vehicle. "Everyone, get down!" yelled the police officer, his voice slicing through the cacophony. Ethan's body moved before his mind caught up, instinctively pulling Elijah close. "Stay down." The chaos was palpable, confusion mingling with the sharp scent of rain and panic. A dozen questions spiraled in his mind, each one sharp and cutting. Who was this man? What danger had they stumbled into? The officer shouted again, trying to calm the masses, the crowd breaking into 100 voices, all steeped in fear. But Ethan and Elijah were locked in their own collision, a battle of shattered pasts and the weight of ancestral ties. "Why did you leave?" Elijah's voice cracked, piercing through the chaos. "Why didn't you save him?" Ethan's throat tightened, guilt surging like a tidal wave. "I didn't know!" he shouted back, desperation twinging in every word. The world around them exploded with sound, confusion echoing, hearts pounding as they remained in their fragile orbit of truth. Would this night unravel everything they had built together? What if this wasn't the end, but the beginning of a truth neither could escape? As the cries mingled with sirens, clarity dawned. Was anyone truly safe? And just then, Elijah's phone buzzed in his pocket, light flashing against the encroaching darkness. "Still here." The words echoed just before a deafening silence fell, leaving unanswered questions hanging in the heavy air. Unraveling threads of destiny drew them closer to a storm they could neither predict nor resist. The stakes were higher than ever before, and deep within, Ethan felt the ground beneath them quake, a tremor he feared would swallow them whole. Elijah's phone buzzed again. "Still here." The words echoed like a heartbeat, but they were too late, drowned in the chaos enveloping them, as Ethan stood gripping his son's shoulder. Then a sudden explosion of sound broke through. The blaring sirens, the screams, the frantic chatter of the crowd. An officer shouted, "Get back!" But whatever had been lurking in the shadows was now rushing toward them like a dark tide. "Dad, what's happening?" Elijah's voice trembled, fear layering his question. He looked at the fallen man, at the chaos unfolding, and Ethan could see the confusion and betrayal writhing in his heart. "I don't know," Ethan breathed, urgency tightening his chest. "We have to move!" But then, the nightmare intensified. From the throng emerged another figure, a woman, her face smeared with grime and despair. She stumbled forward, arms outstretched. "Elijah!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. Ethan's heart sank. No, not here, not now. This wasn't the time for more truths. "Mom!" Elijah's voice broke, eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" The world twisted as Jenna fell to her knees, pleading. "You need to listen. They're coming for you. You've been targeted, and they know about your brother." The atmosphere thickened, tension curling like smoke. "What do you mean?" Elijah shouted, confusion clouding his eyes. "What brother?" But before Jenna could answer, a sudden tumult erupted. A figure in black emerged from the shadows, swinging a baton wildly. In one swift motion, he lunged at the police officer, chaos brewing around them. "Everyone, down!" the officer yelled, rushing to shield Elijah and Ethan. Just then, a series of gunshots rang out, echoing into the stormy night. Ethan felt time shatter, like glass breaking. His instincts screamed as he pulled Elijah close, the sounds ricocheting through the crowd. Fear streaked through him, a searing heat in his veins. In the chaos, a body fell. "No!" Elijah screamed, darting forward, but it was too late. A woman, a stranger, lay sprawled on the ground, blood spilling into the rain-soaked asphalt. Gasps rang out, a wave of horror gripping the crowd. Through the noise, feels like a dream, a figure approached. The man who had attacked Ethan before, shaken but alive. "I'm trying to protect you!" he exclaimed, desperation clinging to his words. "You don't understand." Then Elijah turned to Ethan, eyes wide, and fear morphed into something darker, something like rage. "What do you mean there's a brother? Why haven't I heard this before?" Ethan's heart dropped. He had thought they'd buried the weight of their past, but now it roared back, demanding to be acknowledged. "I didn't know! I swear!" "No more lies," Elijah spat, fury igniting the air like wildfire. "How could you hide this from me?" Time stuttered, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Ethan saw the truth rising between them, raw and palpable. Each passing second amplified the shadows of doubt. But just then, the weight of the situation shifted again. A loud roar erupted, drowning thoughts under a wave of panic. A van screeched to a halt nearby, doors flung open as hooded figures spilled out, faces obscured. "We found him!" one shouted, scanning the area. Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Elijah, run!" He turned, adrenaline surging, but it was too late. The men had spotted them. Elijah was paralyzed, eyes locked on the approaching figures. "Stay back!" Ethan shouted, struggling against the rising tide of terror. Fear clawed at the edges of his sanity. He couldn't let them take Elijah again. But as the shadows closed in, a terrible twist unfurled. One of the hooded figures pulled down their mask, revealing a face that sent shockwaves through Ethan. It was Marcus, the friend he thought lost. "What are you doing here?" Ethan gasped, heart racing dangerously. Everything he thought he knew splintered with that one revelation. "You shouldn't be here, Ethan," Marcus yelled, voice trembling with emotion. "Your son is not who you think he is." The weight of those words hung in the air, heavy like lead. Elijah's breath hitched, confusion morphing into something more profound. The crowd held its breath. The staggering truth crashing down. Who am I then?" Elijah asked, voice barely a whisper among the storm. And just like that, everything tilted. The lines were drawn. The truth had shifted beneath their feet. As the chaos erupted, Ethan realized that the very fabric of their family had begun to unravel. The ground shook with uncertainty. The air crackled with secrets ready to explode. Would they find safety? Or was this just the beginning of a far darker journey? Would the real implications of their choices tear them apart even further? Ethan stood paralyzed as the chaos unfolded before him. He glanced between Elijah and Marcus, the truth swirling like a storm in the air. Breath came hard, tightness constricting his chest. This moment was a fracture. Would it break them apart or draw them closer? "Elijah!" he shouted, desperation clawing at him. "You can't trust him!" But as the sirens wailed louder, Elijah's rage began to thaw, making way for despair. "Why is everyone lying to me?" His voice trembled, hurt cutting through the noise. "What else don't I know?" Marcus stepped in, eyes pleading. "Listen, you need to know the truth about your family. They're not just coming for you. They're after all of us." The air crackled with tension as Jenna, now standing nearby, added her voice to the fray. "I made mistakes, Elijah. Oh, we can't let them take you back." "What do you mean?" Elijah's face mirrored confusion and disbelief, a whirlwind of emotions playing out before Ethan's eyes. Then the masked figures advanced, and Ethan felt his heart race. "Run! We can't stay here!" He pulled Elijah close to him, moving them both away from the unfolding nightmare. "No!" Elijah shouted, shaking free. "I have to know!" The moment hung. The world blurred around them, madness cascading. The crowd continued to scream and fight, but Ethan saw only his son, standing on the edge of a precipice, heavy with questions. "Elijah," Ethan said, voice low and fierce, "listen to me. Whatever happens, I will always be here for you. No matter what the truth is, we'll face it together." Before Elijah could respond, thunder exploded above, a surreal sound rippling through the chaos as flashes of blue and red lit the scene. The police were moving in, and the urgency shifted again. "Everyone, freeze!" commanded an officer, voice booming. "Around us!" Ethan shouted as he guided Elijah behind a car. "They don't know who to trust." Elijah's eyes darted between Ethan and the approaching figures, uncertainty playing out. "But I'm not who I thought I was. What if that changes everything?" Ethan tightened his grip on Elijah. "What matters is who you choose to be. We're not defined by our past. You hear me?" The conflict swirled, bodies jostling, officers barking orders. Suddenly, Another gunshot echoed, and panic surged anew as people instinctively ducked and scattered. Ethan's heart pounded. That could not be a further loss. "Stay close," he yelled. But as they moved, the sounds of chaos began to drown out the confusion. In that flurry, he saw Marcus pull Jenna to safety, their fates entangled in a shared past. "Elijah!" he shouted again, guiding them away, when something amazing happened. Elijah turned to him, vulnerability etched on his face. Maybe we find out together who we are." Hope surged through Ethan's chest, illuminating the darkness that had threatened to consume them. "Then let's do it, but we're in this together." And as they pushed through the crowd, tension faded into something new. Possibility. Everything that had come before felt like a distant echo. For the first time, Elijah took Ethan's hand, grounding each other amidst the madness. Then, like a light breaking through the clouds, they spotted a narrow alley illuminated by a flickering street lamp. "This way!" Eli shouted. They dashed forward, adrenaline surging again, two figures navigating a world of uncertainty and fear. Once in the shadows, breath dangerously close, Elijah's phone buzzed. Yet again, the same words flashed on the screen. "Still here." "What does it mean?" Elijah asked, breathless, bewildered. "I don't know," Ethan said, but deep down, a shiver of dread crept over him. "But we'll find out, I promise." Would they escape before the truth caught them? The city continued to pulse and breathe, shadows growing longer, the night still young. In that moment of tension, Ethan felt a strange urge. It wasn't just a quest for safety. It was the beginning of a truth they couldn't ignore. As they disappeared into the city's embrace, a whisper crept through the darkness. The journey was far from over. You have to subscribe now. Don't wait even a second longer. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And most importantly, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. True fans know how important it is to support the channel. Let's make this community stronger together.